You have to do these kind of things to win?
Yes, that's the very thing. The better the chassis works, the more you're able to use the engine, and naturally the more the engine, the faster you go.
You might start out at the beginning of the night with your weight set one way and change them before it's over?
Right, it changes constantly through the night. I mean, that's the big game to outguess the racetrack. As the racetrack changes, you change the chassis to meet the racetrack.
How do you get started on guessing where to start from? You and the driver take a look at the track?
Right.
You and the driver take a look at the track?
Right. We look at the track and decide the wet versus the dry, how wet it is, and how soon it's going to dry as to how we're going to start the night. That doesn't mean a whole lot, the starting point. After you get into the night, you make various minor adjustments. You make the major one to start with, and then you work the fine adjustments all the way through the night. And lots of times on a restart of a race, if they happen to have to stop it for something, you adjust again real quick. Some of the cars are designed with what we call an onboard weight jacker. It has a device inside that lets you adjust this while you're running, which gets a little touchy. I've had them before, and I rely on my experience to do without them. It's one thing, if you run with them, they'll help you sometimes, but sometimes if you overdo it, you hurt yourself more than you actually help yourself.
You do any adjusting beside the tires and the weight? You tinker with that motor after the race starts?
Very little. Normally, if everything's right, if you're ready to race when you get here, you seldom go onto the hood. If you do, you're normally in trouble. You can make minor adjustments, but I mean, if you've got to go in and start work on the valves or the carburetor or something, normally you've got problems.
If you had to, though, if something came up where you were in serious trouble, I understand that some of these racing crews can even almost go to the extent of changing a complete engine between races.
Right, this has been done.
Some of them even has gone so far as to change a motor, change an engine between races.
Right, I've done this in years past. It's quite a chore. It depends on how hard you really want to work. Sometimes it's successful, most of the time it's not. If you have a major operation at the racetrack, it just doesn't seem to work if you just do it at the racetrack in a hurry. You have to redo it the next week, and normally it doesn't pay you.
What about between races, from the time you shut down, say like running on Friday night, getting ready for the next week? What do you do in between? Do you tear it down much?
Yes, some weeks, like this last week, we crashed a little bit in Dallas, Texas, bent the front end a little, and at the same time it was time to do engine work, so we had quite a bit of work. Some weeks we don't work very much at all, basically just check everything, every nut and bolt, which amounts to a lot of work for my crew.
What?
Did you do the bit with Terry with the Nailon covers?
Terry, what are you doing now? What's the object?
Well, the track looks muddy tonight, and these little things are sight savers. They put them on here on top of each other. They're real thin, they don't distort your vision any. And as the mud gets on there, you reach up here with this little flap and you can throw it away and you have clean vision for another 10 or 15 seconds.
I notice as you're putting them on, you're staggering them. You have to remember a certain sequence for these?
You're supposed to, but usually you get out there and you grab the very bottom one the first time, and they'll all go out.
You get that much mud thrown up from the other cars that you need something like this?
You know, the first few laps when you're running in the back, it's awful bad on a muddy track like this, and just a little bit of mud on there, you know, can block out the view and you might be in trouble.
Why can't you just reach up and wipe it off? What happened? Why can't you just reach up and wipe it off? What happens then?
It's muddy and it's...
Well, why can't you just reach up and wipe it off? What happens if you wipe on that mud?
It gets...
Well, can't you just reach up and wipe it off? Why do you need something like this?
When the mud's wet, it tends to smear pretty bad and it sticks pretty tight and you just can't get it off.
Kind of like looking through a fog then.
Worse than that.
Yes, you did.
Worse than that.
What kind of changes do you have to make as far as the tires and weights are concerned?
We'll put a larger right rear tire and a smaller left rear tire, which we call stagger. When you apply the tire with two odd-sized tires, the larger tire bites farther, which makes you turn to the left, and that's the whole theory.
Terry, how about living on this track? Will you drive it any different as far as finding a different groove? Will you go a little higher tonight, or will you come through these curves sideways, or what's the theory right now?
Yeah, we'll run high on the track tonight, plus we'll be a lot more sideways than usually to kick the RPM up. So